All right, let's try this again. I think the Lord is trying to tell me something about the powers of the air. Um, Based on the experiences of my life, which have really been accelerating lately, and a lot of dots are getting connected, and I've been saying for quite a few years to anybody that would listen that the powers of the air, if Satan has got dominion over the powers of the air, I think that is I think we've been handed a pair of binoculars there to understand our world a little better and to remember that, the way that Lucifer has manifested himself throughout mythology, he always seems to be associated with electricity and lightning. Okay? How did he fall from heaven? What did he bring with him? You know? And our world is interconnected with things that plug in. And he can't be everywhere at once, but I'm pretty sure he can move from one place to another real fast or send something to do that for him and report back. So I want to put that out there because I have been torn for a couple of years about using certain kinds of social networking as a ministry tool, and whether the odds are so utterly stacked against us in terms of algorithms and so forth, that some things frankly don't get seen but appear to have been seen when we go check our stuff. I don't know if anybody's experienced things like that. I tried posting something this morning onto a couple of blessed channels, Got a Minute, Watchman River, a news site, a Christian news site in Israel. And I encountered the most incredible opposition getting that stuff up. I'm not kidding. A couple of computer freeze-ups where it just started squalling through the speaker and froze up, and I had to manually shut it down twice. An inability to open two tabs with YouTube in them at the same time, which I can usually do in a nano. And then when it took me almost 15 minutes to take something which I had copied and intended to paste somewhere. It took me almost 15 minutes of, electricity-based obstacles, unlike the old landline phone, right? And then all of a sudden my dog, who was sitting there on the porch, all of a sudden just leapt up as though there was something dangerous nearby and just had to get out in the backyard, which interrupted me further. And I let him out there, and he went running off after something. And then I was able to come back out onto my front porch where I generally spend my days when it's not too terribly cold, and successfully got that thing pasted and shared in a couple of communities that contain people who are really good with numerics and, all of the ways it's being revealed that don't argue with the logic of the Lord. No matter what your gate to becoming fascinated with the Word might be, Bible codes, the Mazzaroth constellations. In my case, 20 some years ago, I started reading the Bible and I got stuck at Genesis 6. And I was at that time a middle school English teacher, and I realized that our course of study didn't prohibit me from, I suppose, using other people's mythologies to connect with what most of my students, we live in the South, had already heard or were learning about in their Baptist churches and stuff like that. So we had some pretty lively conversations in the classroom back then, and I felt as though I was entirely safe because it was the kids that brought these things up. I was just ready to run with it whenever they did. But at any rate, I got that posted, and that's good in front of people that know how to play connect the dots in ways that I can't, What God gave me was a creative mind, a musical ear, the ability to teach, and starting at a fairly young age, in my 20s, I began to like being of service. I spent 8 years in the Navy and then became a middle school teacher, and now I just take each day at a time and deal with whomever it is that is placed before me. Without shame and without fear, and willing to be foolish or seem foolish. Talking about all these dots that we're connecting, I don't have a rapture dream, but I definitely have a heaven dream and a hell dream. And I had them, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago, when my wife and I, after taking our family through 7 different local churches looking for what that unicorn they call a church home, we found that they were all the same, and they really felt that teaching the Bible was a bit controversial. And so they showed us all kinds of videos. Max Lucado, that fell out in the Midwest that made those Numa videos, that kind of stuff, right? I eventually realized I wasn't going to learn nothing about the Bible if I kept going to church. And so when our youngest was, grown and on her own, we when she was 18, we stopped going. In fact, she'd already gotten out of the youth group of the last place we were at because it was pretty sick there at the biggest church in town. But God gave me a dream years ago that is as real today as the night I had it. I woke up feeling as though I'd been given a really amazing look into something, and that there was nothing evil or deceptive about it, that it was, and frankly, I had a feeling very soon into it that just roll with it and go where you're led in this dream, and you'll find a few things out. And in the dream, I woke up, or felt as though I had suddenly found myself in this strange sort of clamshell wooden building, mahogany colored wood, and the inside of it, the back walls of it and all around like this, were covered with bookshelves and books, old-looking books. And there were upholstered chairs that didn't match, and they were all very comfortable looking, but not new. And I was sitting in one of them. There were other people sitting in some other ones. And then I realized that this was sort of a stage, as though, this is a place in the country where maybe, little theater productions could be put on, or kids could sing, choirs and stuff. And I didn't really understand why I was sitting there in that chair on the stage. And so I got up and waved at the other couple of people that were around. And I saw a trail that led off into some woods with grass and so forth on either sides, moss, rocks with moss on them and things like that. And followed this trail. And as I was just getting on the trail, and remember, this dream came to me when we were about to stop going to church. So I can't help but think this has something to do with the narrower path. This individual walked up to me, and I couldn't look at them. I was completely aware of their presence and their nearness to me. His presence and nearness to me. And I felt clean next to this individual. And he handed me the most strange and beautiful musical instrument. It was made of wood and different kinds of metal. It had a mouthpiece like a trombone, which was the instrument I played in school back as a kid. And my daughter played trombone also. It had a few keys on the side of it, like a keyboard or one of these. Maybe this many keys. There was a mouthpiece coming out of it. It was sort of carved as though it had been, hand carved or done on a lathe. It had a roundness to it. It was about as, it would fit in my hands like this, and I was turning this object over in my hands that had been handed to me by this person, and I couldn't figure out how to play it. It had a little neck on it, like a stringed instrument, and there were three, I think, strings. This chimera of a musical instrument. I've been playing guitar for 50 years and other instruments and stuff. I'd like to think I know something about stringed instruments, but this one, I never saw anything like it. And I asked this individual next to me, "How do you play it?" And he said, "You'll have plenty of time to learn how to play that." And then he took me into this lovely house. I think it had a thatched roof on it. It was made of stone with really nice wooden features. And he gave me a glass of water. And I woke up. I don't know what to say about that, except that I want it. It's so difficult down here. And then, after having told a few people about that dream and gotten roundly laughed at, and I don't remember how long after it was that I had the hell dream, but in the hell dream, I have these dreams with recurring locations I have all my life. And one of the locations I find myself in, and I always have this same feeling of lostness and like I don't belong here, and this is going to be a very difficult place for me to find my way out of. And yet there are these alluring little things along the way that slow my progress as I try to escape. And it's always dusk or later there in this town, a city or its outskirts, or it's a neighborhood near it. I've gone back to this place so many times or been taken there since I was a kid. And I always wake up with a real unsettling feeling. Well, this particular time that I was in that town, it was dark. Businesses had closed, many of them small businesses. There were only not many lights on. Some of the street lights were coming on. I could see some of the street lights didn't work. Some were flickering. The sky was kind of a mixture of like black and orange. There were no stars. I'm glad I never smell anything when I have dreams. Probably wouldn't have smelled good there. I wonder if anybody smells things in their dreams. But at any rate, I'm looking for a motel. I need a place to stay, and there's only one. It's looking pretty nasty, like the one in this town that all the, addicts and prostitutes rent by the week. Pray for people like that. They've been through something. But anyways, I go to the motel. They tell me they have one room left. I say, I'll take it. I go to the room. I have a guitar, an acoustic guitar in a case that I'm carrying, and in the other hand I have a little suitcase. I go to this room and it's a mess. It looks like it's never been cleaned. There's potato chip wrappers, pizza boxes with flies and fly larvae in them laying around. I'm just looking around, really quite astonished that I've just paid for this. And then I hear something, and I look over toward the bathroom door, and this big, hideous, fat, sweaty individual person comes out, scratching himself, asking me what I'm doing in his room. And then he starts opening the suitcase I had brought. And I went over and shoved him away and closed the suitcase. And for some reason I left it there. And when I went to get my guitar, it was broken. And I fled the room. But when I fled the room, I didn't go back to what was on the other side of the door when I had come into it. What I found was that I was on an incline, which I learned later spiraled down, wide enough that maybe 6 people could walk one beside the other. And it would go down a ways and then it would flatten out. And there would be corridors shooting off in every direction from that flat level with doors all along them. Between the levels were like this monster movie equivalent of a food court kind of thing where you could get something to eat, but I just was looking at it and going, oh goodness, no, I couldn't possibly put any of that in my mouth. But there were these really kind of disturbingly happy people there eating that stuff. They were really unclean. And I went down one of those corridors. I was continually looking for an exit sign, right? But there weren't any. I'm thinking if I walk long enough down a corridor, I'm going to find an exit sign and be able to get the heck out of here. And I open a couple of doors. And if I had kept opening the doors, I'm pretty sure I would have seen an absolute display of each of the 7 deadly sins behind the first 7 doors I opened, because the first couple I opened were just disgusting, and I'm not even going to describe them to you, okay, except to say, lust and sloth and gluttony and things like that. I think I saw those 3. It wasn't fun, and it kind of freaked me out. And then I found another incline. Everything went down. You know, And I found at one point when I turned around, what was behind me wasn't what I had just passed. So I had no, I couldn't rely on anything I'd seen to get back out of there because it wasn't there anymore behind me. And then I got to this one level where it was weird. It was this little dark room. This ramp came down into it that I was walking on, and I walked down, and I realized I was really thirsty and that it was getting kind of warm in there, and and I guess I was wearing layers of clothing like I'm doing right now, and I went to take off this long sleeved hooded thing that I was wearing. And just as I was pulling it over my head, something hit me in the back, and I got it off, and I looked around, and there were these things that looked kind of like, really big mosquitoes, or dragonflies or something, zipping around the room, and they were coming out of a cooler full of beer. And just before I woke up, I realized that the floor was getting slippery and that it was getting hard to even get in enough traction to take a step forward in that room. And I woke up. And I mean, I was really, what's the word, palpitating, you know? It scared the dickens out of me. That expression comes from Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol. There's plenty of instances in there where somebody gets real scared, right? At any rate, in the as much as I want to go where that warm, bright, calm, soft spoken, encouraging individual that was next to me, handing me that beautiful instrument and saying, "You have forever, you have plenty of time to learn how to play that." I feel like maybe that instrument might be sitting on the mantle. When I get up there to my room and walk in, and I sure don't want to ever get on that slippery slope that the other dream showed me. And I pray that as much of what my wife and I believe as we were able to communicate to our children, who I believe are going to be tribulation saints, some of them. I sure hope it's all of them. Anyways, thank you for listening.